Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 148. I am your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is the 7th of November. We're actually in Christmas season. This is good and proper Christmas season. You know, I have to find back my nice little mini tree. Take him out of storage. For those of you who were in the live so long ago, there was a Christmas tree once upon a time, but not in this studio, in a previous studio. And I think I'd have to refine that Christmas tree and put him back up. It is the season. And the season that we may have been in, if not for eventualities, would have also been another election season. Technically speaking, we were supposed to be in an election season. There was a lot of talk that this local government election is soon to come, and there were ideas that, they may have put the heavy hitter, Mr. Al-Rawi, moved him over from attorney general to local government, just to put one of the heavy hitters in there to prep for local government election, until a curveball was recently thrown and you find out that actually local government election is not going to be held very soon. There's a longer wait than expected, an entire year longer wait than expected, and that has been a part of the local government reform, at least the first peak of it that we are getting. But many people are confused about this. What exactly is this local government reform business? What are we reforming? What are the reforms going to be? Why are we reforming it? How is it going to be better off because of this? And we see an article here starting off the first reading for the day, the first news for the day, an article saying that very same thing. Port of Spain oblivious to local government reform. People in Port of Spain were unaware of the implications of the Miscellaneous Provisions Local Government Reform Act 2022. When Newsday sought their opinion on Monday and last week, the act is scheduled to be partially proclaimed today. That is Monday, this first day of the week. That is basically gone already. Blessings, Megsy. Blessings. Happy Monday to you. Early week. We're just starting off the week. Happy Monday to everyone. I don't actually hate Mondays that bad. People talk about Mondays and their week starts off on Mondays and all of that, and the Monday blues and all of that, Monday morning blues. I actually look forward to some Mondays. Oftentimes my Saturdays are most busy, this Saturday, thank God for Friday. It's Friday, the weekend begins, and then Saturday is the day I probably work the most. Yeah, so it's all according to what you do. You could set your day in a certain way, that your weeks are in a certain way, that Mondays are lovely days. Mondays aren't bad days for me. I don't mind at all. This live currently, as I'm speaking about what has me busy on a Saturday, this live is brought to you by the Mindful Education Learning Pods that have begun already. And if you are interested, head over to Instagram there and you can hit me up in my inbox. I'll point you with the right contact information if you are interested in such. The learning pods, the idea is homeschool style teaching in very small groups. The groups are 6 and around that number, no more than 6 generally, and we're going from age groups of preschool straight all the way up to CXC. Recently, we're talking about local government, but I digress a bit. Recently, this past week, I had a conversation with a school supervisor, an interesting conversation, and I was asking him what does he think is the problem with the school, where does he think the problems are, and how do we solve some of these problems. And what he was telling me is that he believes actually the problem is in the primary school level, and it seems like a lot of the focus, the vast majority of the focus, the money, the effort is placed in the secondary schools, because that's where you're seeing the end result of this. You're saying, okay, we need to help these students, but the reality is those students began like that since they were in standard 3. And if you really want to help it on a systemic level, maybe how much did they spend for the vacation school business? How much was spent? 10 million or something to that effect. I can't remember the exact fee. How much was that? Let me see if I could pull that up. It was 10 million spent. 10 million spent on the remedial program over this vacation just gone here. 10 million. And what the school supervisor was telling me is that the reality is the more sensible way to tackle a lot of these problems is from earlier. And for example, one of the problems they have is the streamlining of all the schools now, where you don't have that separation that once upon a time was pretty well established. You have the A class, B class, C class, D class. Now a lot of people hated that because of the stigma it puts on people who were in some of the lower classes. And I'm saying maybe we could rename it from A, B, C, D. You know, that gives an idea of a stratified kind of hierarchy business. Maybe we could rename it to red, orange, purple, green. Use colors. But I think it requires, and the school supervisor was agreeing in that sense, that you require some separation based on learning ability. You can't put everyone in the same group. It just does not work, especially when you have 30 plus students in a class. And then if you're talking about you're having that system there from the time these children are 5 years old, obviously you're seeing like these SE exams that recently went, something like upwards of 50% of the children failed the exam, something like nearly 30% of the children got less than 30% in the exam. And you could blame some of that on the pandemic, but it's not all the pandemic, because in 2020 the figure was 11% of the children got below 30%. Below 30%. That's 2020, before the pandemic even begun. 10%, 1 in 10 students, more than 10%, 1 in 10 students were getting less than 30% already. Are you telling me after 7 years of primary school, any student is supposed to be getting less than 30%? It's insane. And I know, it sounds a bit like I'm saying this with vested interest, and I am. I admit that there is some vested interest in that I am teaching privately, but it seems to me like the public system is crumbling, and not many of the people in charge seem to know how to fix it. The same school supervisor that I was speaking to, he was pointing out to me that a lot of people at the top of the education system actually are bureaucrats. They're not people who were teachers. They're not people who understand the school system, and that makes it that the decisions that are being made, the people that are making the decisions don't have on-hands experience of how the decisions affect the school. So yeah. Anyway, if you are interested in mindful education learning pods, hit us up, get the contact information, and register. All right, getting back to the local government business. Many people seem like they aren't too sure exactly what is happening in local government and what this all means. And I guess this could point back at our education system also, in that I am sure you probably the average person in Trinidad, you ask them, what is the local government even for? They might be clueless. So the importance of local government reform means nothing if you don't even know the importance of local government in the first place. Going on here with the news, and their discussion, well, the conversations and questions they had with people in Port of Spain about this act. A few people made comments, but most did not know about it or were unwilling to comment. Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, Faris Al-Rawi, spoke of the far-reaching consequences of the act on November 3rd. The local government term has been extended from 3 years to 4 years. The term should have expired on December 3rd, and elections would have been due by March 2023, 3 months after the term's expiration. The Prime Minister now has the option to call local government elections this year, next year, or as late as March 2024. Whew. So the first provision of the local government reform that has been put there to, really help us, the people in Trinidad and Tobago. What does the first provision do? Well, it allows the Prime Minister a lot of leeway. A year more worth of leeway on when to call this local government election. Now, I saw someone in the chat say this earlier, that the image is down, so they postponed the local government elections. And I wouldn't doubt that, because right now, the ruling government doesn't have too favorable of an image. And maybe in a local government election. So one of the many ways politics works is that very often when one side wins or one side loses, there aren't a lie that is told by many people is the lie of the swing voter. There aren't that many swing voters. There aren't that many people who would vote for one party in one election and then turn around and vote for another party in the next election. There aren't actually that many of that kind of voter. Many people say that and they're lying. Many people say that to hide the fact that they do have a favored political party. Some people, that's what they're saying that for. But the swing voter might be a bit exaggerated. What actually happens very often is that the people who usually vote for one group could decide to go out and vote, or they could decide to stay home. So one side could get 100% of their usual voters, and the next side gets only 30% of their usual voters. And the side that is able to get out more of their usual voters, the side that is able to get out more of their usual voters is the side that generally wins. Dane Khan says we don't have swing voters, we have don't voters. That's a nice concise way of putting what I'm saying there. Exactly. It's not that they're going to vote one way or the other based on what happens. And worse yet, sometimes they're talking like if a debate the week before election is going to change someone's mind. I was going to vote UNC, but I changed my mind after I saw a debate and now I'm going to vote PNM. That almost never happens. It's, as he said, not swing voters but don't voters. So if one side doesn't have the impetus to go out and vote, and what is happening right now with the PNM is it seems pretty clear that the enthusiasm to say, well, I want the PNM to rule, the enthusiasm is going down. I feel if you were to take a survey of the majority of people in Trinidad right now and ask them if they want this present government to be in charge or if they would rather give the government back over to Kamala Persad-Bissessar, I think if you were to force that into a decision in Trinidad and Tobago, for everyone personally, this is my personal view, I think the PNM would win. The ruling government would win because I think Mrs. Persad-Bissessar has very, 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 very low levels of actual support. The problem is, I don't think many people, even who might prefer this PNM government, great is the PNM on hiatus, I don't know about that. Many of the people who might prefer this current PNM government may not be enthusiastic to go out there and vote for them. So if an election is called right now, they may have some problems, especially a local government election where there's already problems to get a high voter turnout in local government elections. There's already that problem. Great as the PDP. Okay. There's already that issue, much more so if you are already down in the doldrums. I could understand the argument that maybe part of this whole postponement business is trying to, wait until some of that enthusiasm clicks back in. If you are viewing this live right now on TikTok or Instagram, please do hit that like button. Double tap that screen if you are over there on TikTok. That's how you hit the like button. Find that like button over there on Instagram if you are so interested in doing, and really hit it some taps. Quite a few. You could double tap the screen how many times you want over there on TikTok. It doesn't mind. All likes count. We're still at amateur levels here. We haven't even crossed the 1,000 mark. So yes, hit that like button, and I am also streaming live as usual over there on YouTube. For anyone who might be interested in heading over there, you can see the articles. When you hear me sounding like I'm reading, it is because I'm reading, and the articles are there over on YouTube. You don't have to go right now because it's saved over there on YouTube too, so you can head over there, Nathan Spring on YouTube, and subscribe to that channel. Other videos are put up there also. Interesting stuff. Yes. So many people are confused about this whole local government elections. The first the first provision of the local government election as it is right now is allowing the government a bit of a longer time to call when the election happens. Now, the UNC, the opposition, obviously, is calling for details to be put out there. UNC wants details on local government election reform. They want it to be put out clearly what are the changes that are going to happen. And I could understand why the UNC is saying this. They're making a point that there are some people who may have been looking to retire, some people who were not planning to go back up for election, some people already planned out their life based on, okay, well, I'm going to end now, and now you're telling them, well, they have another year of service in there. Yeah, this isn't something that seemed very well planned out, and I could understand that. The new term should be the beginning of the new terms and conditions for councillors and aldermen, including full-time executive councillors, new salary, and the 4-year term. The point they're making is, if you're going to change this over, is the government trying to implement regional property tax? Well, that was kind of always the intention as they said it. As they said it, the intention was always that the property tax would head over to local government. That was their professed intention. Now, the point the opposition is making also is, if you're changing the terms here, wouldn't it make sense, seeing as an election could have been called this year or the next year coming, wouldn't it have made sense you call the election and you allow the new councillors heading into the new terms, who would be fully aware that they're starting 4-year terms, that you allow them to go out there and do that? Like, I could understand the argument that the government is using also. They're saying longer terms gives more time for more to be done. And I agree to some extent. There's a problem in democratic politics. There's a problem in voting people in and voting people out, where you lose that continuity. We in Trinidad, we're supposed to be very well aware of this. One government starts a plan. When the other government comes in, they scrap that plan and they start a new plan. And you have new plans starting and being scrapped on a 5-year cycle. That's a bad thing. That's something that, for example, China doesn't suffer that, because they have the same party in leadership for a long time, and that same party basically has the idea that they will forever be in leadership. So they could make 100-year plan, because for the next 100 years they're planning to always be there. In Trinidad and Tobago, however, that's a lot more difficult, and the reasoning that the government is saying they're adding another term is that now that extra year is going to give a lot more for the councillors to give to their constituents. And also they're changing the councillors from a part-time job to a full-time job. I understand that also. I don't think I agree. I understand that you want people to work best, and you want them to put out more effort. But do full-time government officials generally put out more effort? You see, it's always so tempting. Yeah, literally. It's always so tempting to put more resources, put more effort into governance, because, okay, what we're supposed to get from this is X. So let's put more effort into it. But to me, at some point in time, we have to check the reality of what we actually get from it. What's the actual result we get from governance? Each time we create another aspect of governance, we allow them to be full-time, we allow them more time on it, we allow them more resources. Do we get better results from it? I tend to lean on the side of no. So I tend to lean on the side of, here's what. I think Trinidad and Tobago should be getting into more private planning. Why not? Instead of leaning more on the government. And it seems like the government, especially this PNM government keeps growing and growing and growing and growing and taking more areas as they keep growing. And the thing is, they're taking areas as it's their responsibility, but they're not taking areas as in actually successfully doing it. So, for example, an area that the government has taken, and now nearly everywhere in the world, this is the reality, but it's a prime example. The government has taken as an area of their purview, an area that they are going to be responsible for. They have taken the security of the country. You know what? We don't need all of you all to have weapons, and especially our present government and our present commissioner. They have that real old time, the government is boss kind of nonsense. So we don't want you all to have weapons. We are here to handle the security. Us, the security experts, we will deal with protecting you and your safety. Now, that is okay. If the government was doing that, well, it might not even have been okay then. But the government may be doing that, and if they're successful at it, okay. But if the government is taking that as part of their responsibility, but they are unable to do it, then what do we do? Do we then give them more responsibility for our security and they're still not able to do it? It's like, imagine if we had private security in our communities. So our communities were secured by the community members being armed and having armed patrols, and they're in charge. We have a community jail. If you come into our community and you do a crime, we lock you up and put you in our community jail, and etc., etc., etc. We deal with this on our own. There was more of that previously in time, but and the state, the government, they were supposed to deal with the security on, let's say, the nation's cities and the nation's roadways. And let's say my community is safe, but my city and my roadways are treacherous hellholes. Would I then say, let me give up my private security of my community and give that over to the government, who is already failing at the places that they are supposed to be giving me security? It's the same argument that I see with the private ownership of firearms, that this government and this commissioner of police are so intent to be against. Like, no, this is going to cause crime and this is going to cause that. Well, crime is already being caused. People are already being victims of crime. Good night, Central Chow Master. People are already being victims of crime. So what exactly is the point? I saw our former commissioner brought up that issue because recently the commissioner was speaking about the firearm users licenses again, and we're going to cover that one too. Griffith says, what about illegal guns? Political leader of the National Transformation Alliance, former Police Commissioner Gary Griffith, who is again training his proverbial guns on the leadership of the police service for attacking firearm users' license holders while ignoring illegal guns. In a media release on Sunday, Griffith said of the 520 or so murders for the year, only one was committed with illegal firearm. He was referring to the murder of teacher and attorney Keisha Marina by her estranged husband, who also killed himself on Friday. Acting Police Commissioner McDonald Jacob was quoted as saying he intends to crack down on the number of licensed firearms an individual can hold, while also intending to propose changes to the law to limit licenses. And I could get the sympathy for issues like this, because when speaking about legal firearms, that's one of the biggest issues, domestic violence. Because the way I put this is, I don't think, when I'm thinking about allowing more people in the general populace to have firearms, I don't think the general population is a whole heap of mad people. I don't think so generally. I don't think so because the general population always has access to deadly weapons if they so want. Many people have cars. Cars have very deadly weapons. If someone wants to kill you with a car, it's not very difficult for them to do. But you don't see people committing vehicular homicide on a regular basis. I don't think so. You don't see that happening. So I don't think people are just homicidal maniacs waiting for an opportunity to kill other people. I don't think that is the truth. But I do think, however, there are a lot of abusers. There are a lot of abusers that right now there may be limits on their abuse based on what they have access to. I think if someone is murderous in intent, not having a firearm isn't going to stop them, as we know has happened numerous times. But having a firearm does indeed make it a lot easier. If someone is interested in committing violence against a domestic partner, against an intimate partner, someone who's close to them, having a firearm makes it orders of magnitude easier. No doubt about that. So you could understand when people are worried about legal firearms and they're talking about in that specific area. Griffith described Jacob as an old school police officer and said under his tenure there were no murders with the use of legal weapons. He said when he was commissioner, all FUL holders had to receive permission from their spouses to get a firearm. Now, you see that little bit there? That's a bit where it could get contentious. Because what happens sometimes is a spouse may be very aware their partner is abusive. They may be very aware their partner is abusive. But in the moment, they're like, nah, that partner isn't going to go that far. And they will lie. They will be like, okay, yes, give them a firearm. So many people are the welcomers of their own destruction. They welcome their destruction in. And it's not about victim blaming per se. It's about understanding the consequences of actions and understanding the gravity there is in the consequences for certain actions. I always remember a young lady in the Chase Village district that was murdered by her ex-lover, current lover, and one of the things was her brothers and her father banned and forbade that ex because he was abusive. They banned him from the yard. He wasn't allowed to come in there. And the woman snuck him inside the house. And he murdered her. Sheesh. But that wasn't the only provision, Richard Glubman. If a domestic violence report was made which involved an FUL holder, that would immediately trigger a system where the gender-based violence unit would contact the commissioner's office, which in turn would immediately dispatch officers to seize any and all legal firearms. He asked if that system was still operational, as other systems put in place by him for FULs have since been disbanded. That there for a long time, but he is saying that he put it there. So do you have proof that it was there for a long time? And I have proof that it may not still be there, because the current commissioner has no idea it is there. You're saying yes, you may be a constable out there, but the commissioner of police, acting as he might be, is unaware of the existence of this thing, because he's saying he is trying to put that into place. Where is that? Jacob said at the weekend the TTPS was currently digitizing its FUL directory to ensure when reports of domestic violence or threats are made, they would automatically be flagged against the FUL holder. He said until then, when people make reports of domestic violence or threats, they ought to advise the requisite investigator accordingly that the person who is being reported is the holder of an FUL. So it seems like that automatic trigger that the former commissioner was talking about, he put into place, regardless of the constable in the chat saying that he has proof that it wasn't. The former commissioner says he put it into place. The present commissioner says that he isn't aware of it being there. So it seems like that's correct. So there's that. That trigger system isn't even there. And Richard also says having a firearm gives one a false sense of power. And I totally disagree. It does not give someone a false sense of power. It gives them a correct, a right, a precise sense of power. Because a firearm does indeed impart on you quite a bit of power. So to give the idea that, you know, it's a false sense of power, you're feeling like that, but you have no reason to feel like that, is idiotic to me. You could tell that to the young men, the boys basically out there distressing the entire country. Do they have no power? Is that a false sense of power that these little boys distressing an entire country of grown adults? Is it false power they are showing, or is it real power? That seems like real power to me. Now, you could say that the sense of power it gives you could make you do foolish things and make you overestimate your ability, which is true, but I wouldn't say it's a false sense of power. I really do believe that a firearm is to a large extent an equalizer. It is to a large extent an equalizer. And the idea that, you know, firearms will not make you any safer sounds ridiculous coming from people that use firearms to protect themselves. I always find that ridiculous. The police, if you ask the police unions, if you ask the prison unions, they always clamor about being able to carry home their firearms. Why? To keep themselves safe. And then the commissioner would come and say things like, you know, firearms wouldn't make people safer. Like, that doesn't make sense. The Prime Minister comes out and says firearms will not make the public more safe. But he is surrounded by men with firearms. Why is he surrounded by men with firearms, seeing as firearms do not make people safer? Like, it's a ridiculous thing. It's hypocritical at best. It's ridiculous. Totally. So the firearm user's license, and to me, I see Mr. Griffith raising this point, and to me, it's a very important point in all of this. Where are the numbers to back up the worry? The commissioner speaks as if he's worried. The Prime Minister speaks as if he's worried about the firearm users' licenses and how many people have these licenses. Where are the numbers to back that up? This year there was one. One might be said to be one too many, which is correct, but one nonetheless, compared to 500 plus homicides with illegal firearms. Where are the numbers to back up the idea that the proliferation of firearm user licenses out there is really what is causing the crime in Trinidad and Tobago? That's what we really should be worried about. We're spending millions of dollars out there to make sure that it's much more difficult for the regular citizen to get hold of a firearm user license. Why? What are the numbers to back this up? We have the numbers to back up why the citizens want firearms. We have that. We don't need any help to find those numbers. But please furnish us with the numbers. Prove to us that Trinidadians have been, there's some warrant to the idea that Trinidadians have been so irresponsible that we need to tighten the hold on this. Where is the evidence of that? I have yet to see it. And I read news articles pretty much every day. And I've seen them talk about it at length. They complain about it at length with no proof. For the year so far, how many legal firearm license users, use their firearms in defense? I don't know that number, but I can tell you it's upward of 6, at least. One used it in the commission of a crime that we know of. So, I await the evidence on this. What is the evidence that this is such a dangerous thing that, you know, we really have to take care of it? And when it comes to evidence and actually using logic and reason, I find that seems to be lacking so much from our police service. And I understand how insulting that could seem, but as police officers, maybe you all could try to head up to the top as commissioner there and use some more logic and sense and evidence and statistics up there. The police, when asked nearly any time these days, when asked nearly any time of late, what can be done to help fight crime, they talk about something really important they need is the bail law, and that reversing of the bail law has been a real setback for them, and I don't understand that. The bail law, all it did was say you cannot forcefully, there's no requirement that someone doesn't get bail, but if you as the police collect enough evidence to show that this person is a murderer and they shouldn't be let out into the public, it's up to the magistrate. They decide it and they could say no bail. Richard says, once someone is properly trained and vetted, I have no issue with citizens having firearms. Neither me. But can you please talk to your commissioner? Because he does. Yeah, the police regularly talk about the bail bill. What the bail bill was, and I know those of us who have been in the life for a lengthy period of time, we've spoken about this at length many times. What the bail bill was the Parliament decided that anyone charged with murder will not be able to access bail. So the Parliament removed people's freedom before convicting them. You see, in a country like ours that is supposed to be a country based on freedom and the rule of law, you are not supposed to deprive anyone of their freedom without due cause and due process. And due process means a court hearing. So by the Parliament deciding someone charged with murder cannot get bail, they cut the court's responsibility and put it in the Parliament. So a police could just charge you and now you are held in jail for however long until your case is resolved. Gregory Phillip asks why one businessman could have 27 guns and others waiting years. I would assume corruption. I would assume it's corruption. If you ask why, I would assume it's corruption. Now, the thing is, personally, I don't care about, like I see our present commissioner, Mr. Jacobs, and I've heard it from some in the government too, making much ado, and I understand there's a corruption aspect to it, and there may be businesses based on multiple firearms, and the licenses being given easily might have some corrupt dealings. I understand that. But to me, I have no worry if someone has a license for 150 firearms. Listen, if a man has one firearm or 150 firearms, that doesn't make much difference to me if the man does not have murderous intent. Like if he has 1 or 5 or 20 or 27 or 30, that doesn't make him more of a killer. You could only use one anyway. So the number doesn't bother me itself in terms of safety. The number tells something in terms of corruption, which I agree with. What it tells, I think it should be much easier for every citizen to have 27 weapons if they so see fit. My personal opinion. But yes, the commissioner seems intent on regularly saying it's the bail law that is the issue, and I don't understand that. All you need to do as the police is prove your case. I was looking at this as they were mentioning the bail law. Up till relatively recently, they were mentioning the bail law, and I saw a bit of a result from the whole Pennywise robbery that occurred when that was about a month ago, where they murdered the security guards, etc. Faizabad soldier denied bail on murder robbery charges. The soldier from Faizabad charged in connection with the deadly heist outside Pennywise Plaza in Laramine on September 19th has been denied bail. Just like that, without a bail law being passed. The senior magistrate determined that on the evidence that was presented to them, this man should not be allowed outside of the jail. That's your job as a police. If you think that people are being bailed out when they shouldn't be, well, provide evidence that they shouldn't be bailed out. You shouldn't be looking for the cop-out that Parliament determines anybody I hold is not to be allowed out. That's a scary precedent. Let's follow a story here why such things are scary precedents. Judicial error cost state $200,000. Henry, which is not the man's real name, it's a pseudonym given to the man here, says he has been falsely accused of crimes for much of his adult life. But a judicial error which landed him behind bars cost the state $200,000. Henry, 65, who spoke on the condition of anonymity, told Sunday News his most recent problems with the justice system began way back in 2005, March 2005. He was at his cousin's home, where he had been staying for several months, when the police showed up with a search warrant with his name on it. About 3-4 carloads of police came with a warrant saying they came to search for guns and ammunition. They searched and found $25,000 because my cousin is a fisherman, and a quantity of jewels. We explained the source of the money, and the person in charge says we shouldn't keep all that money in the house. That was one night. The next night, 4 police come. No warrant, nothing, calling out my name. I opened the door and it was gun in my face and all kind of thing. They pushed me aside and then put my cousin in one bedroom and me in another. Henry said they searched and found the pillowcase with the money and jewelry and told him to throw the contents out on the bed. They took him back into the living room and one officer held up a matchbox and said, "Look, we find it here." And they were arrested. They found something in a matchbox. Police officers here. The self-employed businessman saw an officer leaving the house with a bag containing his 4 gold bearer bracelets, a gold-colored handbag, and a gold chain, all worth $60,000, and the money, which was $25,000 cash. As we were driving off, we heard someone on the radio asking, "Where is boy?" And they say, "Take your time now, we come in now." Around 2 a.m., they were taken to the West End police station and immediately put in the station cell. I'm not stupid. I knew it was a setup. I don't realize it's a robbery. If I have nothing illegal in the house, what it have to find is about 5 convictions I have, and 3 or 4 of them is false convictions. It was only later that day that Henry, false name, learned there was allegedly cocaine in the matchbox. Both men were charged with possession of cocaine and remanded to jail for 3 weeks. He recalled asking for the money and jewelry through his lawyer at the time, but the officer at the desk said they did not know anything about them. He said he was not afraid but was resigned to the situation. When they finally got bail, he filed a complaint to the Police Complaints Authority, and after the investigation, the 4 officers were demoted. But neither the money nor jewelry was ever returned. So these 4 officers are criminals. They are thieves. And the consequence for theft, if you're a police, is a demotion. Does anyone know the general consequence for theft as a regular citizen in the country? I wonder what that is. Perplexing. I seem to recall something about jail. Like, I don't know. I seem to have that thought somewhere in my mind. Like, if you're a thief in Trinidad and Tobago, I think the legal consequence of that is supposed to have some jail time. But once you're a police officer, you're demoted. And the thing is, the investigation seemed to have found some amount of guilt because they were demoted. And these are the officers that want the ability to hold you in jail without bail, just on their say-so. They charge you and you go down in jail and stay there. This isn't the end of the story, just by the way, it gets more convoluted. By the time his case was completed 2 years later, the case against his cousin was dismissed. But in October 2007, Henry was found guilty and sentenced to 12 months hard labor by Magistrate Andrew Stroud, now a member of the Industrial Court. He was immediately sent to prison but filed an appeal. He spent 3 weeks in remand before being released on bail. During the 10 years Henry was out on bail, he claimed the police continued to harass him. By this time, he had moved out of his cousin's home. He recalled one time when the police told him they heard he had drugs, searched his home, took $5,000 and charged him for cultivation of marijuana. But the case was thrown out because the arresting officer did not appear in court. But I presume they already went with the $5,000. Yes, our protect and serve men. Bear in mind, these things that I'm talking about here, these facts that are being relayed, are facts that are being relayed at the end of a court case that was already settled. So these aren't facts that you're just wondering if it was the truth of. The man already was paid for these things. Henry's appeal was heard in April 2017 and the magistrate's order was set aside. In his lawsuit for malicious prosecution and false imprisonment, he said the learned justices of appeal found that the magistrate did not deal with the prosecution's case and that the claimant was convicted not on the prosecution proving their case but on the basis that the magistrate disbelieved the claimant and that the conviction should not stand. So what the appeals, and this I found to be extremely scary. This I found to be extremely scary. What the appeal court found here was the magistrate that determined this man was guilty. Well, it didn't go here. I still have current. The magistrate that found this man was guilty. This is what the appeal court said. This isn't me. The appeal court said the magistrate was not swayed by the prosecution making their case. Bear in mind, the legal system is framed in such a way that someone is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. So in order for someone to be found guilty, the prosecution has to prove that person is guilty. A person doesn't have to prove themselves innocent. The prosecution must prove them guilty. The appeal court found that the magistrate didn't care if the prosecution proved their case. It was not what was the magistrate's consideration. His consideration was he did not believe the claimant, which technically isn't his business in deciding this case. It's about if the prosecution proved their case. You don't have to believe the claimant. So the appeal court threw out his conviction because of that, and he was free to go. Henry said at the time he did not know his appeal had been allowed. He was not notified as his lawyer had died at the time. That's when you have public counsel. Then 14 days later, Stroud, which is the magistrate, issued a warrant of committal saying Henry's appeal had been dismissed and he should be arrested to serve his 12-month sentence. The magistrate that found him guilty, after his appeal was successful, issued a warrant for him to be thrown into prison. He was arrested on the 11th of December 2017 and taken to the Port of Spain prison the next day. From there, the dirtiness started, and he goes on to explain the horrible conditions inside of the prison. He asked his lawyer he asked his cousin to find a lawyer for him. His cousin did, and attorney Shalini Sankar told Sunday Newsday she was alerted to Henry's case by his cousin. And his cousin found her just walking outside the court. When she scanned the documents, she realized Henry should not be in prison and immediately called the Commissioner of Prisons to alert his legal team and organize Henry's release. She got him released on December 15, 2017. She and instructing attorney Risa Rajnath later learned the charging officer had appeared in the Court of Appeal. He told the magistrate's court Henry's matter had been thrown out, which caused the warrant to be signed off. You all are understanding the depth of evil corruption inside of this? The charging officer, who would have been part of the thief team, went to the appeals court, found out that the man's appeal went through, went back to the magistrate's court and told them that his appeal was thrown out, and got the magistrate court to issue a warrant of committal to put the man in prison. But at the end of the day, the information would have come directly from the Court of Appeal. The magistrate had a duty to check what was going on and not act irresponsibly like that. Ms. Rajnath and I decided we would take up the matter even though he had no income, because it was such a shocking case to us, the malicious prosecution against him. And it's so crazy that the magistrate in the magistrate's court was the same one who issued the warrant to send him to jail 10 years later, after the Court of Appeal said he was not guilty. The same magistrate. Between April 2018 and October 2019, Sankar and Rajnath sent pre-action protocol letters to the Attorney General, to the Commissioner of Police, and finally to Stroud, that's the magistrate. Sankar said initially they didn't want to go to the judge, but they found out they kind of had to go through the judge in the way it was. Eventually, they were issued 200,000. That aliens real? I don't know Subaru 868. Eventually, the case was settled and he was awarded $200,000. He has been waiting for this is his lawyer speaking, for a very long time to get some kind of relief in this matter. It shows some of the things wrong with our judicial system and how things could go wrong for the small man. It's worrying to think of all the innocent people in jail, those who get set up or who don't have access to lawyers, and they don't know what they can do. How many men do you think? 200,000 too small. Yes, the man said that himself. But remember, in his case, his lawyers would have been working pro bono there. He doesn't have any money to carry this case on. So his lawyers are working pro bono. Probably the best settlement they got, quickest as possible, was the one they took, and he just had to go with that. He didn't have lawyers to carry it out. I'm sure if he was a wealthy man with lawyers that could have carried that all the way, his compensation would have easily reached up into the millions. Mr. Rowley wins more than Dr. Rowley wins more than $200,000 in some of his defamation lawsuits. And the part that disgusts me with all of this is none of the officers who committed the crimes against him would be the ones who would be paid. Would be paying. It's not like this money came out of the officer's pocket. It's not like this money came out of Magistrate Stroud's pocket. He didn't have to spend that money out of his pocket, although as these facts seem to line up, he was the one, according to the papers here, Mr. Magistrate, the Honorable. You might decide whether you want to call them honorable or not. Mr. Stroud, he was the one that put him in jail first and then put him in jail after the appeal court already decided the matter. And none of these people are the people paying out of their pocket. This magistrate is not even in the magistrate's court anymore. He was promoted. He's now in the industrial court. He's not even there again in the magistrate's court. He did that and still managed to be promoted. Yes, you consider what that is in reality. Like, okay, you have the apparatus of the state in between you and the person. So the state is doing that. But you are the one directing the state. You basically kidnapped someone, deprived them of their freedom for no good reason. And you have no consequence to pay for that. If you are a psychopath or a sociopath and you want to get away with being evil, go be a member of some arm of the state. Go be in the judicial branch. Go be in the government branch. Go be in the protective branch. You'd get away with being a sociopath with being a psychopath. I wouldn't doubt if you take a survey, there would be a proliferation of psychopaths and sociopaths inside of those systems. And then to think that we see instances of this ever so often. And what the police want to really be able to get a hold on crime is they want back their bail bill, where upon charging you with murder, you get no bail. And you are locked in their system under their authority. Is that what we want? Like, okay, granted, I understand, I agree. Good night, kingdom. I agree. The crime situation is out of control. No doubt about that. You aren't getting me to argue that point. No doubt. But is that how we get it back? Giving police that we shouldn't be trusting, giving them all that extra authority. I tend to lean on the no side. No, I don't think that's how it would work. Now, for the final story of the evening before I dive out, There was a keen piece of investigatorial reporting there in the Guardian newspaper done by one Mr. Keejan Haynes. I know sometimes he hangs around. I don't think he often is in the lives, but I know sometimes he watches some of my content. If he's in the live here, well done, Mr. Keejan. Well done. This was a good piece of reporting. How does the court determine if someone is a threat to society? You mean for bail? If you're talking about bail, that would be determined based upon the condition, the evidence that is provided, the charges that are laid, and the evidence that is provided for the charges. If based upon the nature of the charges and based upon the nature of the evidence, it could be kind of clear that this person is, this is the person we want, then no bail. But if the charges seem a little dicey, or if it seems like maybe this person might not have been the person most involved in the murder, maybe this person is somewhere secondary down on the line, maybe we give them bail. That's how it generally works. Good job, all the best. Thank you, Kingdom. All right, Mr. Keejan Haynes did a wonderful piece of investigatorial reporting where he found out that a certain very popular online blogger is actually a contractor under the Ministry of Finance. Then they shouldn't be charged. So are you saying, Richard, like I understand I think I understand the point you're trying to make, but are you saying that everyone that is charged should only be charged if you are 100% certain of them being part of the crime? Because that's not always how police work is done. Sometimes they charge someone with the intent of finding people going up the line. And the initial charge they hit you with is so that you get scared enough to talk and sell it out to someone else. Charging is also part of the investigation work. So I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that is feasible in reality. I just don't think police work could work like that. That they only charge people they are 100% certain of. I understand the complexity there. I think the way this is solved is we just need to work court cases much faster. The bail thing is only an issue because there's a very lengthy period between the time where you charge someone and you actually finish the conviction or whether they are exonerated, etc. If you arrest someone Monday and then by Friday their case is heard and you find out if they're guilty, nearly no one would have worried too much about bail. If you're held for 4 days and then the case is finished, I might not have even argued for bail. I could understand that. But when you're talking about 9-year, 10-year, 12-year, 14, 15-year wait in a court case, are you going to keep me in jail saying that you cannot give me bail? You're just holding me in jail there for 15 years while my case is being heard. And on the 15th year, I am found innocent. And what happens to the 15 years gone before? The problem is the length of time these court cases take. That's the main problem. That's the reason bail is even an issue. That's the reason bail is even an issue. The time is ridiculous. I agree. And I think that's the main point there. That's just the main issue there. Nearly any other thing you try to do is going to be a piecemeal solution that isn't really going to work. You need to fix that main issue. There is no replacement to fixing the issue of court cases just actually working out faster. But back to Mr. Keejan Haynes' investigative reporting. And I quote from the Guardian headline, and I'm making sure I'm saying Guardian headline because very often many of these kinds of things could get litigious. You know, a pre-action protocol letter could fly across here and there. So I am not saying this of my own accord. I am quoting as Guardian has said. Blogger Rhoda Barath paid $30,000 a month by Ministry of Finance. Popular social media blogger Rhoda Barrett is a contract employee of the Ministry of Finance earning $30,000 a month. This was revealed through several sources, which include a question in Parliament and a Freedom of Information request to the Ministry of Finance. So, how this was found out makes it seem, at least, that the information is kinda 100%. On Friday, Minister of Finance Colm Gov't responded to a question for written answer from the opposition, which asked, will the minister state A, the positions held by Rhoda Barrett at the National Lotteries Control Board and any other publicly funded state bodies or agencies, and B, the responsibilities for each position held, and C, the remuneration package for each position held. The minister responded saying that Barrett was an independent contractor at the NLCB in the area of communications from October 1st, 2018 to May 31st, 2020. It went on to say that Barrett held no position with that public entity or any other public entity. But the written answer continues. However, Ms. Barrett provides services as an independent contractor to the Ministry of Finance in the areas of events planning and communications from time. Guardian Media is also in possession of a Freedom of Information request to the Ministry of Finance filed earlier this year. So the information is coming direct from the Ministry of Finance, according to this Guardian article, which asked for the names and salaries of any communications consultants employed by the ministry. The Ministry of Finance responded, the ministry has retained the services of Type 1 Media and Research Solutions as communications consultant during the period April 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2023 at a monthly fee of 30,000 TT dollars. It is unclear if the contract is new or simply a renewal of an older one. So yes, Mrs. Barrett is collecting a hefty salary, and it seems like a bit of a problem, because from what they were asking about what the duties are, and the Ministry of Finance has 3 other corporate communications officers on contract earning $18,500, $14,200, and $5,000 per month. So they have 4 people on contract to do that same job. You know, something I find really interesting in all of this, when I went to the page, her main page there, and I was reading the responses, she says her defense was she basically doesn't have much defense, because the first line was a lie or something like that. Okay, I'm not sure what the lie is there, but and then I read the comments, and the comments basically went down the line of, so what? They don't think you supposed to be earning plenty money? Make your money, sister. I happy for you. I'm glad you're earning your thing. So you not worth it. So you qualified, and you have all your this, and she is a lecturer at the University of the West Indies, so she is qualified. But I don't think that's the point people are making. The point people would be making in this is that someone who has a public journalist persona as just a neutral commentator on the issues of Trinidad may actually be a paid pusher of propaganda. Now, I would not say that she does push propaganda, because I don't know, I don't watch enough of her content. But it would be hard for you to argue now that with $30,000 a month being paid to you by the government, you are not going to toe their line. Like, how are you supposed to honestly say that you aren't going to be towing the government's line when they're paying you $30,000 a month? And this just continues to show to me that many of these people, I don't know for her specifically, but many people that speak in the public about really caring about the country, and how the resources are spent, and etc. and etc. and etc. They don't actually care about that. They don't care about who bad spends resources, who takes too much resources. What they care about is if those people aren't their friends, if they aren't getting any. They don't mind if the country is mishandled once they benefit in the mishandling. Many people are at that level. Tobago is a prime example of that too. Much to say when they were in the opposition benches, when they reach into governance, the same accusations can be leveled at them. Can you explain when judicial punishment goes wrong to the whole philosophy of justice? I'm not sure what you're asking me there. I'm not sure what you're asking me there. When it goes wrong, I mean, it could go wrong many times. We if you were tuned in a little while before, we went through an example where the judicial punishment was wrong according to the whole philosophy of justice. Now, I consider, I've said this before, the philosophy of justice, I find that to be opposite to how our judicial system generally works. From the moment you have lawyers who are at different skill levels, and you could pay more to get a better lawyer who would get you better justice, then the whole philosophy of justice does not work there. Justice is supposed to be that everyone is entitled to the same level of justice. No one should be above the law. The law treats everyone as an equal, and the justice, that's why in many places when you see depictions of Lady Justice, she's wearing the blindfold. She is not supposed to be looking at people to decide how she decides justice. But when you could pay for a king's counsel, or you cannot pay and you get a public advocate, well, yeah, I don't see how that even works on the philosophy of justice. But such is life. All right. That's all I have for now, folks. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. It is 11 o'clock. Yeah. Any further questions or comments before I dive out? Any further? If not, I will be diving out. It was nice on this lovely Monday evening. I will see you guys for the next Mindful Live, which will be tomorrow at 9:15. Thanks for the help on my reading log. I'm not sure what you're talking about, sir. But I will see you guys tomorrow for the next Mindful Live. Until then, I hope you do well. Keep safe out there. Peace, 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 peace. Hold it down.